Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be continuing my 2018 reading wrap-up with books 26 through 35, I believe. I have not done a wrap-up in a very long time because I got busy with school and finals and everything like that, so now I'm trying to play catch-up and get all my wrap-ups in. If you guys don't know, these videos are where I do small, quick surface layer reviews of all the most recent books that I've read, give you my thoughts, my ratings, etc. And let's get into it. Why does this seem so close to my face? The 26th book that I read in 2018 is Roombinder by Alex A. Kaler. This is a YA fantasy book set in a post-apocalyptic world, and it follows this main character named Tin, who is a hunter, and hunters are people that have been enabled to perform magic. It's elemental magic, and they're in charge of protecting humanity and trying to keep humanity alive because there are evil beings that used to be human that have been warped by magic that are trying to kill off the human race. Every hunter has different abilities based off of the different sphere that's been activated for them. So the main character, his water sphere is activated, and he also has some control over earth, and each element has different properties and everything like that, but it's mainly supposed to be about him protecting humanity from these random creatures and trying to survive. What this book is actually about is that Tin, at the very beginning of the book, runs into a boy from his past and immediately falls in love with him. It is super insta-lovey, and for the rest of the novel, they're trying to survive, sort of, but it's mainly a focus on how they have a dream life together, and they're gonna have a dream house with X number of dogs and cats, and it's just so distracting from what should be the main plot of the book that I just didn't really enjoy it very much. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. The writing showed promise, but I just couldn't get over the fact that the main character was so obsessive over this boy that he hadn't seen in years and years and years, and had only been reunited with for a couple of hours before they were absolutely in love and couldn't be separated, and it was just a barf fest, and yeah. I'm debating whether or not to get rid of this book and to continue with the series because I just love the concept, I like the cover, I like the world, the magic, the fact that the bad guys were these people that had access to magic and allowed the magic to kind of corrupt them, and I just thought that that was really cool. But if there's gonna be this huge focus on this insta-love romance, I don't know, it was so distracting. It's just so disappointing because it had so much promise, and then it just, oh. After that, I picked up Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is the first book in a YA fantasy series that follows a boy named Laszlo Strange. At the beginning of the book, he's an orphan and is being raised by monks. He has this huge obsession with this mythological city called Weep. It wasn't always called Weep. At some point, everyone lost the ability to remember the name of the town, well, city. One day, he finds out that the city that no one else believed was real is in trouble, and he is now going to go and try to help this city recover from whatever bad thing has happened. It also follows another character named Sarai, who is trapped in this weird living situation where she's struggling to survive with 4 other people, and each of them has some supernatural abilities, and I just really loved this book. I did an individual book review for this, so I'll leave that up in the card symbol if you want to check out more of my thoughts about the writing and the world building and the magic and the history and all of that stuff. A couple of things that I will talk about in this video though that I forgot to talk about in that one is that there is one side character specifically that I freaking loved. That was Minya. She is in this weird living situation with Sarai, and she is such an awful character. Like, I really did not like her, but she was so well done that I was just loving her being in the story and seeing what she was up to and all of that. She's a great character. Another thing that I forgot to mention was a con for me, and that was that they are struggling to survive, but there is a pretty easy way that they could have made their lives a lot easier, and I didn't understand why that wasn't taken advantage of because they tried to take advantage of it later on. That's super vague, but I wanted to say it. And the other thing is that this book does have insta-love, which is so weird because this book had really terrible insta-love and I hated it, and it really affected my reading experience. But this one, I was more forgiving of it. It's a slower read because the writing style is so descriptive that it took a little bit longer to get to that point, and it also happens a lot later in the book instead of happening at the very beginning. So I think I was a little bit more forgiving because I hated this insta-love so much that I was okay with this one. I was okay with it, which was super weird because I usually hate insta-love. Overall, as I said, I freaking love this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It has a ton of Atlantis vibes, and I was eating it up because I love Atlantis. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. And if I were voting in the YA category for the BookTube SFF Awards, this would be the one that got my vote because it's definitely the best in my opinion. The 28th book that I read in 2018 is going to be Teen Titans Volume 3, which is Death of the Family. This is a part of the DC New 52 universe, which stopped a while back. I can't even remember what the new DC universe is called, but this was this huge Batman cross-series event that involved all of the characters surrounding Batman. Teen Titans has one of those characters, so it was involved. I've read this story in so many different comic books already that it just was repeating itself. So unfortunately, if this had been one of the Death of the Family volumes that I had read earlier on, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I've read this same plot over and over and over again in all these different series, so I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I've read it a bunch, so it wasn't anything new and it wasn't as exciting for me. If you're curious, this is what some of the artwork looks like. So good art, but just a repetitive story that I've already read. After that, I read Binti, which is the first book in a trilogy of science fiction novellas. This is written by Nnedi Okorafor, and the second book was nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards in the short fiction category, which I'm also not voting in, but I want to read the books so that I don't get spoiled during the live show. Binti follows this girl named Binti who is a part of the Himba tribe, which is a tribe of people living in Africa. The tribe has this tradition of putting this substance all over their bodies if they're female. Binti is what's called a master harmonizer, which is someone that is kind of tasked with bringing peace to the people around them. But she has bigger dreams than just staying and being a part of the Himba tribe. Himba, I don't know how to pronounce that. And instead she decides that she wants to go off and go to this university that is set on a different planet. And this series just follows her mental process as she is debating what this is going to mean for the rest of her life and how people are going to react to her wanting more from her life by going off on this adventure, how people will be very upset about that and she won't be viewed as suitable to be someone's wife and stuff like that. I enjoyed this novella. It was very, very quick. I think it's only like 90 pages or something like that, so there's not a whole lot that happens, and what does happen happens very quickly, so you don't get a whole lot of information, you don't get a whole lot of investment in Binti and her story. I thought it was really cool, but I ended up giving it 3 stars because it was fine, but nothing spectacularly amazing, at least in my opinion. Obviously, a lot of people don't agree with me because it won the Hugo and Nebula Award. I enjoyed it, but that's pretty much it. Then I ran to one of my local libraries and read Paper Girls Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and illustrated by someone, but it doesn't say it on the cover. This one follows a group of young girls and they are paper girls, so they go around on their routes and deliver the papers to everyone. And then some science fiction apocalyptic stuff starts happening. It follows them dealing with all of this apocalyptic nonsense and trying to survive. For this first volume, I enjoyed it. It was just a little bit all over the place, as well as I thought that this one was really just focusing on trying to shock and awe the reader instead of developing a base plot line and developing the characters or somehow sucking you in. Instead, it was just shock and awe kind of stuff, just being vulgar to shock the reader, and I just didn't get invested very much, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. But the third volume was nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards graphic novel category, which is one that I am voting in, so I had to read Volume 1, and I also read Volume 2. This one I liked a whole lot more. You start to get a better grasp on what is happening with this science fiction apocalyptic event. Start to learn a lot more about the characters as individual people instead of this group of paper girls. You start to learn more about the main character, you start to learn more about the science fiction elements, as I said before. So I think that it was just a step up overall, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I'll insert some clips of some of the regular artwork instead of just the cover artwork so you know what you're getting into. But I thought that the second volume was a lot stronger than the first one, as I said, and Plot-wise, I just think it was better, so 4 stars. This is the last comic book in this wrap-up. I read The Unwritten, Volume 1 by Mike Carey and Peter Gross. This one is subtitled Tommy Taylor and the Bogus Identity. This one follows this character called Tommy Taylor, and he is living on Earth just as a Joe Schmo. He goes to these different science fiction and fantasy events where he has these huge lines and he just signs people's books because his father created a book series that follows a character named Tommy Taylor. People have just kind of connected that character to the person Tommy Taylor, and that's really how Tommy is making a living. He's just going to these different events, being paid to be there, and signing all of these people's different paraphernalia for Tommy Taylor. But then some intense things start happening and he's trying to figure out what the heck is going on because people are now trying to kill him, and it doesn't make any sense because he's just a human. Like, he's just a regular person. Why are people trying to kill him? This is what some of the artwork looks like, so it's a bit of an older style, so just know that going in. But I thought that this one was actually really fun and I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I love the trope where authors have some control over reality, and once enough people read a certain book, they start thinking in a certain way. What comes to mind when talking about the premise of this book is that book by Cornelia Funke, which is called Inkheart, where the girl can read characters out of books. It kind of gives that similar vibe of authors being able to change reality by creating a story and people consuming it. After that, I read Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I did a individual book review for this as well, so I'll leave that up in the card symbol. But she has just moved to a new house with her parents, and her parents are not very attentive, so she spends a lot of time on her own and exploring the house and the yard around the house. While exploring the house, she finds this small little door inside of her house and she wants to know what's on the other side. She finds a parallel version of her world where her parents are very attentive, except for her parents in this other world have buttons instead of regular eyes. All they require Coraline to do to stay in that world and to be doted upon by these parallel versions of her parents is that she give up her eyes and have buttons for eyes as well. This edition is illustrated by Chris Riddell, which is one of my favorite illustrators, so I was just loving the illustrations in this one, and I did really enjoy the story overall. I think that the ending was a little bit rushed, so I think that that could have been teased out a bit more, but as I said, I did enjoy this. I think I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It's one of those stories that apparently terrifies young children, so if your child is wanting to read this, I suggest reading it with them so that you can make it a little bit less scary, because I have had multiple people comment on that review that's in the card symbol and say that the movie or the book terrified them and they had nightmares and stuff. So just a warning for that, but I didn't think it was terrifying, but maybe you will. Then I read The Unwanteds by Lisa McMahon. This is the first book in a middle grade fantasy series. This one follows a boy named Alex who is considered unwanted in his society. The Society of Quill, which is where Alex and his twin brother Aaron live, has some similar vibes to how I felt when I read The Giver. I don't know how many years ago that was, because the society decides everything for you. So if you are decided as a necessary, then they assign you a job other people can't do. So if you are necessary and you're a farmer, then your life is pretty protected because you're necessary to society. If you're a wanted, you're given a job that is somehow involved with the running of Quill, like administrators and everything like that. And then as a child, if you are considered unwanted, they kick you out of Quill and you die. Alex is an unwanted, and so he is a part of that group of children that are going to be kicked out and killed off, and his twin brother Aaron is considered a wanted. It just kind of follows them after that. When Alex and the rest of these children are about to be eliminated, they find out that there is an eccentric magician who instead saves their lives and welcomes them to this town called Arteme. In Arteme, artistic people are saluted, they're praised, and creativity in Arteme is considered a huge gift and, in their cases, a weapon. I read this book as an audiobook. This is my brother's copy. I knew that he really enjoyed this series, so I wanted to jump on and see if I really enjoyed it as well. I did really enjoy the narration. I think that it did a good job. I really liked this world. I loved how art and creative thinking really lent to a better society, and being creative and thinking differently than other people was encouraged. Even if you disagreed with what the people running Arteme were saying, you were encouraged in doing that because that creates better ideas or creates ways in which to bring people together or solve problems, stuff like that. So I thought that that message was incredible. I liked the contrast between Quill and Artemis and how there was this tension all the time that Artemis would eventually be found out and that there would be this huge problem with Quill because Quill is very structured and they hate creativity, where Artemis is not as structured and loves creativity, and the people that lived in Artemis really suspected that the people in Quill would not tolerate them existing, which kind of makes me think of how in olden times, and I mean still today, people's differences in religion cause this huge problem when you could just let them be and everyone just be by themselves, but there has to be this huge problem. Not exactly the same, obviously, but I thought that there were some parallels there. I enjoyed the characters as well. There was one thing that I just didn't really love. There was this one character that is a good guy, but bullies the main character, and then the main character has to be the one that apologizes, and the person that bullied him is like viewed as being in the right, and I did not like that at all. I really dislike that character, but she's apparently this great character. But other than that, I had a really fun time while reading this, so I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It is a bit of a weaker 4 stars, maybe a 3.5 stars that I, in my mind, bumped up to 4 because I really enjoyed it. I'll definitely continue with the series because I did enjoy the audiobooks and my library has the rest of them, so I'll just continue to read them on audio. If you are a very creative youth, I definitely recommend this series for you. I think you'll really enjoy it. The 35th thing that I read in 2018 is Vinland Saga Book 1 by Makoto Yukimura. This one follows this boy named Thorfinn, and at the beginning of the book he is, I guess, traveling with this group of Nordic Vikings. The Vikings that he's traveling with actually murdered his father, and so Thorfinn is traveling with them because he's on a revenge path. He wants to kill the man who killed his father, who's the leader of this Nordic band. He believes that Askeladd killed his father in an improper way, in an inhonorable way. He wants to take revenge and kill him. I read this as my OWL for the History of Magic, where it was supposed to be just historical fiction, because this is set in Nordic times. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. This one gives a lot of backstory to the main character, which I love backstories. Anytime that a book has backstories for the characters, it usually ends up being my favorite in the series because I think that backstories are totally necessary for you to relate to a character and to get invested in their story and invested in what they're doing, because if you can't understand where they're coming from, then their actions just seem random. So I appreciated that in this first book of this series, we get a lot of his backstory. If you want to see what some of the artwork looks like, it looks like this. There's another shot of it. There's the main character. If you're into manga, I definitely recommend this one. I think that it's going in a very good direction, and I'm just really on board with the main character. I totally can get behind his motivations. I totally am rooting for him. I want him to get his revenge, but at the same time, you kind of like this band leader, this Askeladd. I liked him as well. I have no idea where the series is going, but I'm excited to continue and read along. So those are the next 10 things that I read in 2018. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what you guys have been reading recently. Have you read any of these books that I talked about in this video? If you have any recommendations for me, as always, leave those down in the comments, as well as anything else you want me to know, and I will talk to you guys next time.